Tonight, yet another mine disaster in Turkey leaves 41 dead. We'll have Medyascope's very own Doğu Eroğlu to break it down. There is yet another tiff between President Erdoğan and opposition figurehead Kılıçdaroğlu as he calls him out to fight. And there is a surprise resignation from President Erdoğan's party. And the central bank cuts interest rates yet again. I am Murat Tursan, and this is This Week in Turkey. Our main story tonight, 41 miners are dead in the Bartın district of Amasra province after there was an explosion in a coal mine, potentially caused by coal bed methane. Families of the deceased say that they were fully aware that there was gas in the mines and had known for weeks in advance. The full report of the incident is not out yet, so this is only speculation. But what is not is Turkey is no stranger to mining disasters, as 3,000 miners have died due to either mine collapses, explosions, or carbon monoxide poisoning since 1941. However, according to numbers from the International Labour Organization, about 1,300 of those 3,000 deaths have only happened in the last 20 years. And in addition, in a move that angered many, President Erdoğan had a more laissez-faire attitude about the disaster. Commenting on the disaster, Erdoğan said, this happened despite Amasra mine having the most advanced capabilities. Some may mock this, but we believe in the greater plans of fate. These things will always happen. We should keep that in mind. And President Erdoğan had also blamed fate in the previous 2013 Soma disaster that claimed the lives of 300 miners. Doğu Eroğlu was on the ground back in 2013 covering Soma disaster, so he unfortunately is all too familiar with mining disasters in Turkey. He will be with us shortly, but here are the details first.
A coal mine explosion in the Bartın district of Amasra has left 41 miners dead. A methane explosion sparked at approximately 300 meters down, partially collapsing the mine and trapping the miners. Initial reports indicate that the blast was caused by fire-damp flammable gas found in coal mines, typically coal bed methane.
Bakın cinayet kaza değil. Keserler, sansür yaparlar, kesin. Benim 11 aylık bebeğim içeride yatıyor. Baba baba diyor, gülüyor, hiçbir şey demiyor. Öldürdüler. Her yeri yanmış. Ben sarılamadım. Ben sarılmaya korktum. Yüzü yanmış, kolları, bacakları yanmış. Sarılamadım, uğrayamadım.
Though coal mining is a deadly business, the risks vary greatly around the world. In the United States, there are 6 coal miner deaths per 100 million tons of coal extracted. In China, 127 miners die per 100 million tons. And in Turkey, 722 miners die per 100 million tons of coal extracted. Workplace safety in the mining industry in Turkey has always been a point of criticism. 3,000 coal miners in Turkey have died in cave-ins or explosions since 1941. The last major mine disaster in Turkey was the Soma coal mine collapse in 2014, where the disaster claimed 300 lives. Prior to Soma, miners had protested against dangerous mining conditions in late 2013, and the opposition had demanded an investigation into the workplace conditions. But the ruling coalition of AKP voted down the investigation only weeks before the disaster.
Çocuğumun aklını sorsun hepsine. Bir haftadır diyorlardı gaz var, ölçmeden yollamışlar. Eşim 3 aydır diyordu havalandırmalar yapılacak, sürekli ertelediler, sürekli. Benim eşim can çekişti, nefessiz kaldı, yandı. 17 saat 17 saat cesedini bekledim. Ceset torbalarını karıştırdık. Ceset bekledim. Bilgi vermediler. Bitti. Gitti kocam. Gitti. 30 yaşında gitti. Evladı kaldı. Gitme dedim işe. İşe dedim gitme bugün. Dinlen dedim. İçime doğmuş gibi kalktı. Tırnaklarını kesti. Tıraş oldu. Duşunu aldı. İçime doğmuş.
Ama en önemli detay, yani en önemli detayı şunu söylemek gerekirse, Şaban mesela eşine daha önceden söylemiş, 15 gün öncesinden içeride gaz kaçağı olduğunu, diğer madenci arkadaşları da gaz kokusu aldığını daha bir iki hafta önceden söylenmiş bu daha önce. İkiz bebeği vardı, daha hamile eşi de şu anda kardeşim. O da hastanede. Durumu bakalım ne olacak, ne bitecek. Çocuk da çok üzüldü zaten. Eşini kaybediyor, ikiz bebek var. Durum bundan ibaret yani. Ailesi.
Joining me now, veteran reporter and Medyascope's very own, Doğu Eroğlu. Doğu, thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Now, Doğu, this is truly a horrific happening, but unfortunately one of many. Now, let's focus on this disaster at hand. What can you tell us about this mine disaster?
Yep, the last week's disaster in Amasra, it took at least 41 miners, and the death toll might rise still because several miners are still at the intensive care units in Istanbul. Well, we should speak about the origins of the disaster.
Mm-hmm.
What caused the explosion? First of all, we know there was an explosion because of the injuries, because of the fatally wounded people. The first signs show us there was a explosion due to probably combustion of methane gas, and it also the wounded also show that their respiratory systems were heavily damaged. So we understand that they inhaled the explosive or very hot coal dusts. So at least we know that there was some sort of methane explosion, and also we can say that there was some leftover coal or coal dust lying around in the mine. So the first estimations, according to the testimonies of the wounded and the testimonies of the relevant engineers, we can say that there was some amount of negligence. We will see the exact amount after the initial and the final technical reports are submitted. But we know that there was something wrong about the Amasra coal mine.
Right. I mean, we shouldn't assume anything until the report is in. You're correct, but this just keeps happening in Turkey.
That's probably.
There is an unusual number of fatalities due to coal mining in Turkey. And you've covered Soma disaster in 2014.
Yeah, I did.
Now, you do have a good deal of experience covering these things. What can you tell us about the Soma disaster, and if this has any similarities?
You're right. There's a pattern going on, but Soma and Amasra accidents or disasters are not the same, but they are branches of the same decision-making procedure, I would say. Like, I cover coal in Turkey a lot, and I should say that there are two types of coal mines in Turkey. We must have some graphics related to those.
Yeah, guys, let's go to graphic A1.
The most common pattern, the most common practice is open pit coal mines in Turkey. You can see on the photo on the left, like it is an open air excavation. You just go layer by layer, dig the ground, and the coal is very much closer to the surface of the earth. So it is somehow, I would say, it has some risks, avalanches, floods. It is also open to workplace safety issues, but not as much as the underground mining. And underground mining is a very complex issue.
Guys, let's go to graphic B1, please.
This was from Muğla, and this is a typical underground mining facility. Underground mining facilities in Turkey, there are some large mines with mechanization. Mechanization, I mean, in those mines, even though it's underground, you can put in lorries, huge trucks, excavators, huge machinery, and they have most of the case in a machinized underground mining
Let's go to B2.
facility. You can have a large conveyor belt. You can see those belts here. These belts transport the ore, the mine, or the equipment, even some people in some cases. But let's talk about Soma and Amasra.
Okay.
Soma is a huge mine, and it was very suitable for mechanization. So if we assume Soma, we can assume as if it was on the last picture, a large mine, a large mechanization. So it was different than Amasra, because Amasra and the
Let's go back to B-roll, guys.
the mines very close to Amasra, for example, Zonguldak, they have very narrow corridors. Like, you cannot put heavy machinery in those mines. So in those mines surrounding the north and west Black Sea region, you have to work labor intensively, because they are very narrow. You cannot create huge galleries. You cannot put in machinery. You cannot put heavy equipment, so that you have to rely on the labor. You have to rely on the ordinary workers. So this makes a decision. Like, there is a turning point there.
Yeah.
If you put in so much labor, it becomes quite expensive to gather up the coal. And coal is very cheap, regardingly, if you compare it to the other sorts of elements that they dig up. So basically, mining companies, huge mining companies, don't really are after getting those contracts. Like Amasra mine or other mines in Zonguldak, they're not very profitable. But the government, after they gave the contracts for large mines, which are suitable for machinization, they gave away those contracts to private companies. The government is still trying to keep those mining towns, such as Amasra, Zonguldak, and rather small towns around Zonguldak. They try to keep their economies alive, so that there's a tiny bit of operation going on in each and every one of those small mines. Small mines, I mean, which are not suitable for heavy machinization. When there's no heavy machinization, the profits are very less. And if you do not put in a lot of labor there, you cannot really dig up a lot of coal per year. So, and that gives us another issue. They don't want to invest further in those mines. So in Amasra's case, most of the experts I talked to claim that there might be a missing methane drainage in the mine, because they don't want to invest in the mine. They're just keeping it alive for the town's sake,
Right.
for Amasra's and Bartın's sake, for keeping the old school jobs alive. So they might have the organizers, the administration of the mine might have just forgone the investment for the methane drainage. Methane drainage means, like, when you go so deep in a coal mine, at some level, it is most probably that you will see some large volume of methane. And methane is very combustive, very explosive. And when the air becomes thick of methane, when the air becomes rich in methane, when you put the oxygen in the picture, and which is very combustive too. So at one point, you just turn on some device, or you hit some rock very hard, and it gives out a spark so that the whole methane accumulation explodes. So that is how the mines, in coal mines, we see a lot of explosions in Turkey. The methane drainage means taking this methane from that, for example, minus 700 level to the surface. And it is very costly. And those around those small mines do not want to invest in such issues, because the mines are not profitable at their own at the first place.
Right. What a system. So the mines are only profitable if you just keep throwing more and more bodies into the mine, and you can't really take any workplace regulations and safety measures because it's too costly.
Putting in a lot of labor makes it even more costly, because you have to take necessary precautions, but they're just keeping it alive for its own sake, so they don't bother.
God,
it seems.
Yeah.
Because I again underline that for amasra, we have to wait for the initial reports and the final reports after the incident, because engineers will look for the root causes of this particular explosion. But the pattern I was telling you about is a very common thing for such mines.
I see. So, thank you so much for coming in, and that was enlightening.
You're welcome.
Love to see you in the studio.
Thank you.
And in domestic news, President Erdoğan yet again calls opposition figurehead Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu to announce his candidacy already. As a matter of fact, Erdoğan does more than simply call him out. He lets him know that if there's anyone who's preventing him from announcing his candidacy, he'd be happy to fight them, shoulder to shoulder with Kılıçdaroğlu. This is but the second time the president has called out Kılıçdaroğlu to announce his candidacy, and with good reason. The conventional wisdom is that Kılıçdaroğlu, as the most limelight-drawing member of the opposition, has serious presidential aspirations. Kılıçdaroğlu has, on several occasions, cryptically alluded to his aspirations as well, though nothing is for certain as of yet. Though there are dissenting opinions on this, President Erdoğan will very likely put his name in the hat for a second term next year as the 20-year de facto ruler of the country in 2028. But why would Erdoğan goad Kılıçdaroğlu into announcing his candidacy? Because Kılıçdaroğlu is the lowest polling potential candidate to run against Erdoğan. He is Erdoğan's best chance of securing yet another term. In yet another development in the AKP, however, the AKP wildcard Şanlıurfa MP Ahmet Eşref Fakıbaba has resigned from the party in a vague message. This is only the latest resignation in AKP, as the party tends to have those every now and then. Here are the details.
AKP's chairman and president Recep Tayyip Erdoğan spoke at the group meeting of his party this Wednesday. Erdoğan once again challenged Kılıçdaroğlu to announce his candidacy. Erdoğan cried, "I call on Kılıçdaroğlu. Since you are so sure of yourself, bring it on. Face me in the elections if you are brave enough. We will compete through our visions and projects." Kılıçdaroğlu struck back on Twitter, taking jabs at President Erdoğan's occasional press conferences where he speaks to pro-government journalists with pre-approved questions using a prompter. Apparently, you've said a few words today. You've asked me to compare our visions for the country. If you are unafraid, if you are not shy of revealing that you are nothing more than a prompter balloon, you and me, on whatever TV channel you want. The prompter in front of you, your advisors in the back, and me in your face. Let's talk vision. Back on the AKP side, another resignation rocked the party today as Şanlıurfa MP Ahmet Eşref Fakıbaba resigned from the party. Fakıbaba announced his resignation in a cryptic message saying, "In the last 20 years, I have had many great friends. I am sad to leave them. However, I am also happy that I will no longer be alongside people I am not ethically and politically aligned with." AKP has had a bevy of prominent resignations in the past 2 decades. Famously, former Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu and former Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Babacan both left the party unceremoniously to set up their own parties currently in the opposition coalition. Fakir has long been a wild card in the AKP ranks. Back in 2009, AKP expected to win the province so handily that some AKP members were quoted saying, "If we ran a suit jacket, we would win." President Erdoğan then was met with protests when he arrived in town, many holding up suit jackets. Fakir denied the MP candidacy by AKP, ran as an independent, and won the province, but later transferred over to AKP in 2013.
And in a move that surprised absolutely no one, the central bank cut interest rates from 12% down to 10.5% yesterday. On the world stage, Turkey is perhaps known for only a few things: history, culture, cuisine, and of course, its economy is perpetually on fire. The government says inflation is over 80%. Other resources say it is much, much higher than that. And the Turkish lira has, of course, lost half of its value since this time last year. And that is no accident. See, President Erdoğan has some unorthodox fiscal policies. President Erdoğan particularly dislikes high interest rates and wants to see them cut down to 5%. No one is quite sure why, but since late last year, the central bank has had a round of firings, new appointments, and since then has been continuously cutting interest rates. Of course, if you want to maintain your currency's value and reduce inflation, that is the exact opposite of what you would want to do. Every time the central bank cut interest rates in the past, the lira took a massive hit and lost value over and over again. But now that seems to have tapered off somehow. Again, no one is quite sure how and why, but a few economists weighed in on the matter. Here are the details.
The central bank cut the interest rate yet again, despite inflation hitting over 83% this month. Continuing its unorthodox economic policies, the central bank reduced its policy rate by 150 basis points from 12% to 10.5% yesterday. However, unlike previous times where the lira suffered massive crashes, right after the central bank's announcement, the last few times the lira has been holding steady. The lira only budged a few cents right after the announcement, this time gaining a slight value, before going back to 18.59 by market close. It wasn't long before economists took to Twitter to scold the central bank once again. Rafet Gürkaynak wrote, "When the central bank realized that we no longer are shocked by its terrible monetary policy, it found a way to shock even considering its terrible standards. Thank God there is no longer such a thing as monetary policy because no one cares anymore." Shanal Babushchul wrote, "The policy rate is 10.5 now. Wealth transfer from savers to corporate owners continues." Yalçın Karatepe wrote, "By bringing the policy rate down by an uneven number, they tried to make it look like they arrived at the number through comprehensive analysis." Uğur says, "It's a shame. Those getting paid in liras and saving for retirement in liras are being made poorer and poorer in plain sight. The bureaucrats who said inflation was 25% are cutting the rate by 1.5% today and will cut it another 1.5% next month down to 9%.
And with that, that's it for us on This Week in Turkey. I have been Murat Tursan. A special thanks to Kathleen Phelps and Mehmet Tanverde, as per usual, for helping me put the show together. And folks, please don't forget to subscribe. Give us a like if you're feeling generous. And as per usual, thank you for joining us.